So today's a big one. We're going to start today by talking about the recent copyright that we received. First US copyright for a purely AI generated image. Kind of talk through what that means for AI art, what that means for AI creativity, and how you can think about it in planning kind of like how you're going to create something using tools. So I'll get started, share a screen, and we'll get going. This work of art is called A Single Piece of American Cheese. It was registered as a copyright on January 30th, I believe is when we got the actual registration. And it is purely AI generated in the sense that every single piece of this was produced using AI. We shared out a couple of details about it with folks that were interested. We've got, I would say, a pretty large group of people who are realizing that this is a turning point for use of AI creativity in professional use cases. And the main reason is because previously, and this is also inclusive of my attempts to get copyrights on AI works, the Copyright Office in the US basically did not recognize in painting and iterating on an image as creativity. They basically said it is the same as going and getting like an art commission and telling the artist to change something. And so you're not really directly involved. The big change now is that because we've demonstrated the direct manipulation and control that you can get on the canvas and the in-painting process and being able to kind of like get it to where you want to go, we've proven that human creativity exists in this process and we have protected the work. Now, the thing that I want to call out is how this copyright was granted, because I think understanding the mechanics are important. It is useful to know why we got a copyright and what exactly we got a copyright on. Because if you look at the copyright registration, you'll actually see that the copyright excludes 2D artwork and AI generated materials. So we don't actually have a copyright on all of the individual images that the AI model created. We have a copyright on the composited whole image. In practicality, it means you can't take this and put it on t-shirts and sell those without being in violation of copyright law and infringing on our copyright. If you knew how this image was created, maybe parts of it could be pulled out and used. And so I'll kind of walk through that with a visual here that might help. So if you think about the original image that was created, it was kind of like, we'll say like this region here. This was kind of like the original image. We then outpainted up and I think kind of like expanded this area. We added some more like in painting around this part. We added a obviously very awesome slice of American cheese melting on the head. We went down and kind of got, the sides here. We did a bunch of stuff in the face, kind of like you kind of get the idea. We're doing all these parts and pieces. And we kind of have this this work that ultimately, at the end of the day, is a kind of an amalgam of all the parts and pieces of the AI. What we got a copyright on is, if we kind of like look at it this way, we got a copyright on this selection and arrangement, this kind of like abstract composition of the different parts and pieces. But if we were to, for example, see somebody take just the bottom part of this, so if they took this out and turned this into a banner or something, kind of like blew it up and did some work on just that bottom piece and kind of like cropped everything out, that would not be considered infringing on the copyright. A, because the individual tiny part is not copyrighted as like an output of the AI. That one specific outpainting segment might not be protected as this in the same way as everything else. But also because if they do work like that, if they turn this into something completely new, that's transformative, right? That's a transformative process. They have done something novel. They've created a new piece of work. That is fair use. So this gets into the entire conversation about copyright and AI. This is a really interesting time for AI creatives, but this is the work that we submitted and got the copyright for, and kind of talk through a little bit of the legalese behind it. There's a lot of nuance in the copyright conversation for folks that are thinking about this professionally. If you've got like a lawyer that's maybe a little bit risk averse, this is a useful exercise to kind of walk them through. We have a full white paper that explains how we got the copyright, the history of copyright in AI art, as well as tools that we're building for businesses to help them support their copyright claims and demonstrate human creativity in the process. So the question was, is this on a copyright on in painting toward a specific arrangement? No. It is in painting, selecting and arranging different parts and pieces, even if you don't know where it's going. And I think that this is probably the crux of a lot of debate around AI creativity right now. You can spend 80 hours making a perfect prompt that gets exactly what you want. You can do all of the different kind of like setup and the configuration, get the right steps, get the right CSG scale and the scheduler. None of that will change whether you get a copyright or not. What does matter is the process of iterating on it and kind of selecting parts and pieces and in painting whatever you choose as an artist, whether it's something that you originally thought about or not. I'll give you an example. When I was in painting this, or when I started this work, I didn't know what it was going to be titled. I didn't know that there was going to be a single piece of American cheese involved. That kind of emerged from the process of working on it. And that's kind of how all art kind of is in some sense. Most artists find that the process of the art creation is an emergent phenomenon. It happens as you're creating it, as you're participating in the creation of it. And that is where the human creativity element comes in with AI specifically. So that is the short summary of how we got this. We have some links to the different pieces that we've put out to help explain this and help people understand this. It's also a super useful asset if you are working with an internal member of your team who is concerned about IP protection in the age of AI. It's a good tool to give them. Somebody asked, if you come to the copyright office with an image, how can they know if it's AI generated or not? Only by your self-reporting? Yes, only by your self-reporting. They rely on you telling them what was AI generated. I would say might be difficult for them to tell, but if they were to ever find out, you would lose copyright on it if you didn't disclaim it. Something to be mindful of. Somebody asked, just wondering, how does copyright know any details on any creation? How can anyone detect what you're using to generate? Today, it's relatively difficult to parse that out. It's kind of one of the reasons why it's a little bit absurd, because, it's kind of an arbitrary line of generation. It's like, who did what? How do you prove it? How do you demonstrate it? And right now, AI generation is self-reported. It could be in the future that changes, but as it is right now. Somebody said, I think the way the Copyright Office sentenced it, you could just cut parts of it and say it's not copyrighted. Yes, that is correct. So if you look back at Zarya of the Dawn, which is a graphic novel, the graphic novel is a bunch of individual images from Midjourney that were composited together to tell a story. The story, the composite, is copyrighted. Each individual image is not. If you wanted to take one of those panels, crop out all of the graphic novel and just take the picture and make a t-shirt out of it, well, you can, because that individual image is not copyrighted. The difference here is that when you have a single work, like a single piece of American cheese, that is composited through a series of in-painting, the entirety of the image is hard to separate. It is hard to take out one individual part of it to copy that one piece, because the relationship between that one piece and the rest of the image is almost what makes up the entirety of the piece of the work that's copyrighted. In legalese, yes, you could take an individual piece and copy it, but if the meaningful protection is over the work and you can't really tell what parts are which, and you don't know which of them was composited into what when it was produced and got a copyright for it, it's kind of practically protected by this kind of like cohesion or the selection and arrangement piece that has brought it together. So that's kind of an answer to that question. What are we going to get a copyright on in this specific composition? Assuming that the Copyright Office agrees with our determination that this and what we just did now is human creativity, A, and B, that this would not have happened if not for us, right? The AI did not generate this particular expression. We did this, right? What are we going to get a copyright on? This bear, this panda, that's not copyrighted. This man, this particular region, monocle, none of these individual parts. Somebody could go take that and use that somewhere else, right? They could take this hat, they could take this. Now, obviously, if we use the sketch to guide this first, then there's like the complexity of copyright increases when you have sketches and renders that are injected into the process. But what we're ultimately getting a copyright on is this general piece of work, right? Like that is in its entirety, the concept of a panda taking a selfie with a monocle and a person behind him in a top hat and a bamboo forest. That is our expression, right? The monocle and the panda are the human creation. The sum of all parts is the art. That's right. We have put it together. It's kind of how we did it. Somebody said it is not its parts, nor the sum of its parts. It is the act of summation that is human. Oh, I feel like that. Is that a quote from somewhere? Or are we making some new things right now? Some new quotes? Do we need to quote Dunkaroni on that? That is beautiful, beautiful.